Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com. In today's episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about teams at the Big Four accounting firms and the differences between them. And there's different types of organization or organized teams. Sometimes there's teams that are very organized, and then there's teams that are just chaotic and all over the place, and the documents are everywhere. And I don't want to say there's only two types. Like there's an extremely messy and extremely organized. There's obviously varying levels of organization in between that. But I do tend to notice that teams fall into one of these categories. And the very organized teams are usually on well-established clients with, and you know the type of materials you're going to get. There's not that many acquisitions or dispositions in the year. And so it's very routine oriented. But additionally, it could be a large client with a lot of changes in the year, but you just have a lot of people on the engagement, a lot of history with the engagement. And so you know the client better, the organization is better of how you receive the materials and of how you provide the client with the materials. Where the chaotic engagements are all over the place, and it's harder to work with your internal team, the external team. The client doesn't provide you information on time, and so the way you work sort of mirrors the way they work. And I would say a large majority of Big Four accounting firms clients are more chaotic than others because they're typically large organizations that are hiring the Big Four accounting firms for a reason. And that's just, for some reason, that's just the way it ends up. There's always some kind of chaos going on because the client is either new or they're undergoing some kind of change, or there's some kind of new pronouncement, or there's a change on your team. Maybe the files are never updated, or there's just too much work and the teams have never been able to get around to organizing it. But another thing that contributes to this is margins of the Big Four accounting firm. The Big Four accounting firms are always trying to have high margins, so they try to have the least amount of people on an engagement that can get the engagement done. This doesn't really allow for time for planning, organizing, coming up with creative ways to make it more organized, coming up with creative ways to deliver to the clients a great product. But the engagements where there is more organization, it tends to be because of the client, because the client demands it. The client is constantly checking on status, or maybe the client just demands that everything be really high level, a really high level of deliverable, high quality. They don't just want things at the last second. Most clients don't care how they receive things. But also these more organized clients, they care how they receive the materials, but they also care about how the engagement is run. They don't want contractors, like foreign contractors on the engagement. They're a lot more particular about how their engagement is run, and therefore this is mirrored within the Big Four accounting firms as well. And as far as is one better than the other, I think the more organized clients make the day-to-day stress at the Big Four accounting firms easier. But there's also less opportunity, in my view, for personal career development on organized clients, because you take things for granted and you think the grass is greener still, because it's just part of working in the Big Four accounting firms. You're going to have to work around the clock anyway. And so you think maybe this nice organized engagement, is boring. And it probably is, because you're probably only working on one component of it. You're not managing the whole thing, because it's hard to manage a very large client, the Big Four accounting firms, and stay organized. This episode is brought to you by Boomer. Boomer helps you ace the interview at the Big Four accounting firms, and it does this by helping you practice on questions typically asked on the Big Four interview. And if you use the link or promo code which goes to tryboomer.com/big4, or the promo code BIG4, then listeners get 10% off their purchase. So go ahead and check out their website, tryboomer.com, and see if you like all the tools they have that can help you prep for your Big Four interview. And you do choose to purchase it, make sure to use the link in the show notes, because with that link, you're going to get 10% off, or make sure to use our promo code. All the details are in the show notes. So if you're on an organized client, you're most likely managing a piece and you're not learning as much. But also you might take that organization for granted and try and move on to another client. There's just a lot of, they both have their pros and cons. So I don't think there's one good way. It's good to be on both types of engagements. It's good to be on as many good engagements as you can. And, ones that aren't organized that well could also be good engagements. The clients can be good and they just need help, and you can really build your career on that and trying to improve things little by little. But that's the other thing I wanted to get at today is you shouldn't just be completely overwhelmed and think it's the end of the world because something's chaotic. You should take it, that's part of working at the Big Four accounting firms. That's how they make money. They make money when clients need something. And the more issues the client has, the more money a Big Four accounting firm is going to make. And the more need for your services the Big Four accounting firms are going to have, and so the higher your salary, etc. So even though it might be chaotic, you should still value that. And you should still value being on a disorganized client. It's frustrating for people that are very organized, and I think a lot of accountants tend to be people that like things more organized, but you get used to being disorganized because of various limits within the Big Four accounting firms, like budget, margin, etc. And because of those limits, you get put on more engagements. There's not time for getting organized, even though you get emails on a daily basis telling you how to organize documentation, how document retention, you need to maintain certain documents, you need to make sure your statements of work are in a certain format. You can only do a certain amount of work under your statement of work, otherwise you need a new one. You have to go through all these processes. So it can be difficult to maintain all of that to Big Four accounting firms. But if you're on one of these organized engagements, a lot of that stuff is very automated and they know where it goes. And so you might get lulled into comfort. And if you're comfortable, in my experience, you're just not gaining enough experience. Your resume is not getting filled out as much as it could be. You're not learning as much. You're not experiencing as much, but your stress levels are a lot lower. So your personal life is probably a lot better. So that's what I wanted to discuss today about organized chaos within the Big Four accounting firm and the types of teams that you might encounter and what you might anticipate if you don't yet work at the Big Four accounting firms. So that's the podcast. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast for future updates and check out the show notes for helpful links that we have. Thanks for listening.